Me and my girlfriend broke up a month ago, later found out that the guy friend she would go on a hiking with is dating her, didn't know if I got cheated on. So a bit of a backstory here, me, 27 years old, and my ex, 29 years old, met on a dating app, exchanged socials, talked over a lot like what's our hobbies, how our previous relationships ended, and some other personal stuff. She got cheated on multiple times, was abused as a child by her stepdad, lost her mom years ago to cancer, and grew up without her biological father by her side. She was basically raised by her grandparents. I came from a relationship that lasted almost 3 years before it fell apart due to my shortcomings. She was the greenest of the green flags. My family is still intact despite my father suffering from post-polio syndrome 3 years ago. Other than that, my backstory wasn't as heavy as my ex. We dated a couple of times, then about a month into knowing her, I noticed she wasn't all there, told me to stop pursuing her, but we still went ahead on our planned date just for the sake of it. I was given another chance a week after, and eventually we became a couple after 3 months of courtship. A month after we got together, she confessed to me that she had a relapse stemming from her previous relationship, where she got cheated on. I tried consoling her as much as I could and she got over it pretty quickly. I asked her about the time she told me to stop if she also had a relapse. She did. I noticed that after her first relapse, she would get irritated so easily over things like bad photography and cutesy nicknames. I would apologize as much as I can considering what she had to go through before. She would even ask me if she was being too hard on me, and I would tell her no and that it's okay because of what she's going through as a girl, PMS, hormonal imbalance, period, that she went through a lot in her life, work stress, and all. This became constant even when we were together. One of the few times she made a joke, she told me that she was the only mature girl I've talked to. It didn't sit well with me because I felt like she was saying that my previous girlfriend was immature. I told her in a call that I don't think my ex deserved to catch strays like that, and that there are times that she might need to lighten up just a little bit. She apologized, but after our call, she said that she was returning everything I spent on our dates and was gonna cut me off from her contacts. I talked her out of it and we moved on. This became one of the main problems we had during our brief relationship. Whenever I tried venting out, she automatically thought that she was a terrible person and I would feel bad about it. I told her that the point of feedback is not to put us down but to see how we can adjust as long as the criticism is valid. I also said that she could be honest with me as much as she could because it would be worse if she bottled up her feelings. As far as the second relapse, I tried brushing it off, but it bothered me. I wasn't bothered about her getting mad at me on a weekly basis. The thing is, I felt I wasn't good enough for her. The first relapse and her mood swings that came with it felt like it was her reaction to her relapse and she would pin it on me. For days, we continued exchanging sweet messages and do our usual calls. But I noticed that she started cracking jokes about how she's only for dating and not dating to marry. I asked her if she was really sure of me and she said no. I also asked when can I visit her again, but she said that she had told her grandmother that we broken up. She would laugh and say that she was only joking. It made me uncomfortable. She also called me out on my poor choice of clothing wear, habits that were a pet peeve of hers, made comments about my weight, and asked me if I could bulk up to 70 kilos. I was at 65 and recovering from gastritis during this time. I made sure to eliminate those bad habits like chewing loudly while eating, up my weight to 70, practicing good photography, and so on so I would not embarrass her and I could fit her ideal man. Another thing is that she questioned my sexual orientation due to my clumsiness. I wasn't offended by all of this really. It did make me conscious about my weight, but whatever. During our last month together, I was on the receiving end of a silent treatment for no reason and we got into a verbal fight and broke up on bad terms. Silent treatment always felt like it makes the people who actually care stupid. It was a very heated argument and that was the last time we talked. I would have days thinking if I was very inconsiderate, if I should have apologized and things would have went differently. More than a month after we broke up, I saw pictures of her with her guy friend she met on a hike that she's dating now. Then it hit me. During our last month, she told me that she doesn't feel like talking and that she wanted to relieve the feeling of missing me. We did patch things up days before our breakup and got back to the usual sweet messages. I never got jealous of the friends she made during her hikes. Matter of fact, I was thankful to them for guiding her in finishing the climbs. She had goals and I was always supportive of her. I am over her, But one thing that's bothering me right now if she did cheat on our relationship is that, of all people I trusted, I did not expect that the betrayal would come from someone with first-hand experience with it. It also made me question myself. I'd been losing sleep for a few days now about what happened and how much leeway I gave just to make sure that she doesn't suffer the same hardships she went through before, but it also got me thinking that maybe I should have respected myself a lot more than I did. TLDR, looks like my ex was cheating on me with the guy he met during one of her hikes. Second story, about a year in our relationship, it's been a rocky 4 years. I'd decided I had enough of my partner's verbal and emotional abuse. He would be incredibly nice, supportive, and kind to me most of the time. I genuinely do love him deeply, but then once every 4 to 6 weeks he would let out his rage and behave abusively to me. It is good most of the time, but it has been a confusing relationship of hot/cold, love/hate, being treated amazingly/being treated abusively. At that time, he had already yelled/screamed at me, called me despicable, vile names, attempted to abandon me in an unfamiliar place without my belongings. Woken me up in the night to scream at me, would start fights that would exhaust me and go on for hours until 4/5 am, acted aggressive/intimidating, threatened to dump/discard me, used the silent treatment, and dumped me for a short time. The fights would start over very small things, like me leaving a dish out, me paying attention to my work and not answering him right away, making him a few minutes late to get brunch, etc. After one of these particularly horrific episodes, which started over something very minuscule, where he berated and yelled at me for hours, he discarded me and told me we are over and done. I got a motel to take a break for a bit and was about to leave, when he changed his mind and suddenly realized he couldn't lose me. In desperation, he held a knife to his throat and threatened to slit it in front of me if I left. I was in a state of shock and dissociated from my body completely. I told him if he didn't put the knife down I'd call the cops, but he finally put it down and I spent several hours calming him down. After, I told him I needed space and asked if he would let me go to the motel for the night. He said yes. I planned to get some sleep there and recover after the incident while creating a plan to leave him, since I was thousands of miles away from any family. At the motel, I was in shock, traumatized from it, and I was too afraid to tell my mom or my friends about what happened because I didn't want them to know. First, I called a domestic violence hotline, and they told me I was being abused and that I was in danger and needed to find a safe plan to leave. Then, I called up a male friend on the phone who I'd recently started chatting with a few weeks prior. I'd started to develop some feelings for him in the past few days prior to this event since my boyfriend was abusing me consistently for weeks and I planned to leave. Until then, our conversations had been platonic, and he knew about some of the emotional/verbal abuse I was experiencing. I told him what happened, that I was scared and shocked, and I didn't know what to do. This friend was calm, kind, and reassuring and provided me with warmth. He told me that he worried for my safety and how he'd help me find a plan to leave, and he even offered me to stay with him/meet up with him if I needed. He said that I didn't deserve to be treated that way and that he would never treat a woman like that. I was grateful to have someone to open up to. Then, he told me that he had feelings for me and started to become flirtatious. Still in a state of complete shock/dissociation, I first resisted somewhat, then reciprocated the flirtation. I was just so relieved to have someone be kind to me, and very quickly, the discussion became sexual in nature. I reciprocated that as well for about half an hour before I snapped out of it and realized what I'd done. I immediately felt absolutely disgusted and ashamed with myself. I realized very quickly that this friend had actually taken advantage of my state of vulnerability and wanted to use me for sex. I noticed that he was following hundreds of pages of half-naked women on social media, and became immediately repulsed. I told him that I felt he'd taken advantage of me for his sexual interests, immediately stopped talking to him, deleted our conversation, and blocked him permanently. I have never talked to him again. A few hours after that, I felt absolutely horrified at what I'd done. I felt like a deceptive, terrible cheater. I cried, felt confused, and missed my boyfriend, feeling like I'd made a terrible mistake to leave. In that moment of weakness, I agreed to allow my boyfriend to come to the motel a few hours later to chat. We talked. I never told him what happened. I was too afraid and ashamed to say anything, and he convinced me to come back. I felt so weak, confused, and conflicted that I came back with him the next day. He apologized for his behavior, told me he wouldn't treat me like that again, and we made up. My recollection of this event is so hazy because I was in a state of total shock and blocked it from my memory. I have never flirted with or cheated, emotionally or physically, on him since that traumatic night. It's been a few years since, with multiple additional episodes of emotional/verbal abuse, then, and I have never had the courage to tell him about that day. It haunts me in my dreams, and sometimes I wake up in a sweat feeling panicked and guilty. I'm terrified that he'll find out, and also terrified that I'm a horrible, deceptive person. He already suspects that I'm cheating all the time, and if he finds out about this he'll never let it go. I have carried this guilt with me for so long and I can't let it go. I just have to get this off my chest. TLDR. After extensive emotional/verbal abuse and being dumped/broken up with, I planned to leave my boyfriend, but he stopped me from leaving with a suicide threat. I stayed to calm him down, then left for the motel, where I was traumatized and dissociating, feeling vulnerable. I talked on the phone to a male friend. That friend started flirting with me. I first resisted, then reciprocated, and we had a discussion that became sexual for a short period of time. After realizing I was being taken advantage of, I stopped it immediately and blocked him permanently. I felt terrible about it, and got back with my boyfriend after, but still never told him about that night. This haunts me still, and I feel so disgusted and guilty about myself. I am not sure if it's considered cheating.